It can be a rental property. It can be a note. It can be a non-performing note. Don't care what it is, long as it's secured and it's currently paying 11%, I'm in. What amount of cash do you need monthly in retirement? Now, for many of you, you already know what the answer to that question is because you're already spending the amount of money that you need for retirement because you already have mortgage, you have car payments, you have utilities. I mean, you've got all this stuff, right? When we add it all together, the average consumer right now is spending approximately $5,500 per month. That's the amount of money that the average household is putting out on housing, food, insurance, cars, fuel, and all of these other expenses. So $5,500 a month means that right now you are spending $66,000 per year on expenses. Now, if the average income in America right now is $64,500, what that tells us is that most people right now don't even have enough to cover their monthly expenses, okay? So if that's where you're at, we obviously need to figure out how to generate more income in the now, but we also need to be wondering, how are we going to produce this much money in retirement? Now, what most people are doing is they're going to the Social Security website and they're putting in their age and they're putting in how much they've contributed and they're looking at, what is it now? Is it 65 that you can start drawing?
I think it is 65.
It used to be 63. I think it's 65 now. And if you start drawing at 65 or 66 or 67, you're going to get X number of dollars. Now, before you guys blow up the inbox with questions and correcting me on all of these things, the exact specific details of what I'm discussing here are not what's important. Also, please know I'm 47 years of age, so I have not yet gotten my AARP card, nor have I checked to see what I'm going to earn in retirement at 67 years of age, because that's 20 years from now, and honestly, I don't believe that there's going to be any money in that account for me anyway. So I'm planning on not having access to Social Security, but I know many of you are. So you're looking at this and going, okay, well, if I retire at 65, I'm going to get $1,400 a month. If I keep working until I'm 66, I'm going to get $1,600 per month. And if I wait until I'm 67, then I'm going to get $1,900 per month. Now, that's going to be variable for every single individual because it's based on how much money you've put into the system over your life and in your career, okay? So for some, it's a lot higher. And for others, it's a lot lower. I've met people who are getting $800 in Social Security income on a monthly basis. I don't even know how you live on something like that. So again, I'm not here to shame anyone by any means. I'm simply saying we got to be thinking of this stuff far earlier than, you know, I'm 60 now and should I retire in 5 years or 6 years or 7 years? Well, that's not the question, is when should I retire? The question is, when can you afford to retire? I was having dinner last night with a friend and he retired when he was 51 years of age. Wasn't drawing Social Security. Spent 30 years in the military. He retired with a military retirement. Went in when he was 20, retired at 50, 30 years in. Good for him, that's awesome. But that's unfortunately not the path many of us took. So we don't have that 30-year retirement from government. So we got to figure something else out. Now, let's say that we're going to retire at 67, so we're going to have $1,900 a month in Social Security. And so now we need to bridge the gap, okay? So we're going to take our $5,500 minus the $1,900 in Social Security. What that means is we're $3,600 short. So now the question becomes is, at 67 years of age, what am I going to do that's going to produce $3,600 a month in income, or if we annualize this, I need to be making $43,200 per year. And that is simply to subsidize the money that I'm getting from Social Security. So now when you go to your financial advisor, they're going to go through a similar process with you, and they're going to tell you, okay, if we need to produce $43,200 a month, what we need to figure out is if we can get you a paltry rate of return on your investments at, let's call it 3%, how are we going to get you the $4,320 that you need, $43,200 that you need? So let's see, if we take $2 million bucks at 3%, that would get us the 60,000. So hey, good news, we don't need that much. Let's go $1.5 million. $1.5 million at 3% would produce 45 grand. All right, let's use that. That's a nice round number. So your financial advisor is going to say, look, I'm pretty confident I can get you 3%, and that would be yield on money. So that would be $4,500 per month, or I'm sorry, that would be $45,000 per year. That you could draw down now against this, okay? So 3%, it's probably going to go into some money market account or something. Remember, this is going to be volatile based on where rates are at, but you're going to need $1.5 million at 3% to produce the money that you need to bridge the gap between Social Security. Well, this answers an even more challenging question. Where am I going to get the $1.5 million? Especially if I'm already 60 years of age, how am I going to get there? Well, if you can generate a higher yield on your money, you don't need nearly as much to get there. For example, if we take $750,000 and we earn a 6% rate of return, what does that produce annually? Well, let's take our $750,000 times 0.06. Oh, look at that. It produces $45,000. Now, is it easier to generate 1.5 million or 750,000? Stupid question, right? 750 is a lot easier to get to. But what if we could simply take 325,000 and produce a 12% return? It would generate the same income. Now, here's why your financial advisor is not telling you this. They do not have a vehicle that they can confidently assure you a 12% rate of return, because that is a monstrous rate of return. So if we take 325,000 at 12, that ends up being only 39,000. I just want to make sure we're accurate with the math. Well, Lee, that's not enough. Okay, well, how about we get 13% returns? 13% on 325,000. 42,250. That'll get us there. Or what about 14%? 14% on 325. There we go, 45.5. And I know that's really small, you guys, so I'm going to move that over here. So 325,000 at 14% annualized rates of return will produce $45,500 per year. Now, here's the other exciting thing. For a lot of you, you have this amount of money in your home. I got an email last week from a gentleman. Very sad story. I felt bad for him. He and his 4 children live in a home that they own free and clear. And he's in his mid-50s. And he worked very hard to pay the home off, because once it was paid off, he and his wife were going to go travel and go experience the world and go do a lot of other things, because they wouldn't have the debt and the obligation of that monthly mortgage payment. Unfortunately, 6 years ago, his wife passed away. And so his goal went from paying off house so they could travel the world to paying off house because that was his goal, and just getting his kids through school. So it was a sad story, and I felt really bad for this guy, because I can't imagine losing my spouse. And I'm sure there's some of you here that you've dealt with that loss. I can't even fathom what that would be. My wife's so important and critical to everything that I do. But he finds himself in this position. So he's emailing me and saying, Lee, you know, I've had this terrible experience. He says, but not all it's not all bad news. He said, I have over the last several years met a woman in Colombia. We just recently got married, where life is great, and I'm embarking on a new journey, new adventure. And he said to me, he said, what do you think I should do with the house? He said, should I keep the house? It's free and clear. Use it as a rental or an Airbnb. It's up here in my neighborhood. And then move to Colombia and have somebody property manage the thing. Or do you think I should sell it and invest in other properties, or maybe buy some property in Colombia? What do you think I should do? And I wrote him back and I said, well, first of all, I'm sorry to hear of your situation. That's terrible. I'm sorry about the loss of your wife, but I'm equally excited for God giving you a new wife and a new life and a new start. That's exciting. I said, but to own, and it's about a $500,000 home. I said, to own this $500,000 home in cash and keep it as a rental is only going to produce for you about a 3% rate of return, because you can only get about $1,600 a month for this house in rent. Well, if you take $1,600 times 12, that's $19,200 divided by the $500,000 value of the house. He's getting 3.84% yield on his money, which means he's playing in this range right here. Okay? If you own real estate right now that's free and clear, have you taken the time to take your rental income divided by the value of the asset to determine what your return on cash is? Because if you own it free and clear, every dollar of that house is cash. And if you're living in it, you're not getting any rate of return. Oh, but it's appreciating. You guys got to consider the market that we're in, right? With rates rising and inventory levels going up, prices are going to be falling. You're going to be seeing a negative appreciation in many parts around the country. So is holding it for cash really the best strategy? Probably not. And so I responded to him. I said, look, I said, what I would recommend you do is you sell the house and you take all of the cash and you invest that cash into something that's going to produce a very consistent, very stable rate of return of 8 to 9 or even 10% if you can get it. That $500,000 will produce $50,000 a year, and I understand the tax implications and all of that. I'm just making the numbers real simple. If we could put $500,000 into something producing 10%, that would produce $50,000 a year. $50,000 a year, and you don't spend any of your principal. Now you can take that money, go down to Colombia, get a job. His wife works down there. You can invest in Colombia real estate. You can get loans against it, but you've got that steady, consistent cash flow coming in. And so he wrote me back. He says, Lee, thank you. That's a great idea. He says, just one problem. He said, where in the world am I going to find a steady investment that's producing a 10% rate of return? Unfortunately, I didn't have the time to teach him the note business in and of that moment, but that's the first thing that came to my head is, why isn't this person investing in notes? And that's really what the catalyst of tonight's presentation was, is, you know, there's a lot of people who are really intelligent. They've done very well for themselves, but they don't know how or where they can go to get this return that they need to bridge the gap to the monthly expenses. And so that's why we wanted to focus on this here this evening. So as you guys look at the Social Security income, and again, I'm just preparing you for retirement, all right? And many of you, like me, may be a long ways away from that, and that's okay, because what we want to be focused on is this number, okay? The number you need to be focused on the further you are away from retirement is, how much cash do I need invested at what number to produce the desired outcome so that I can live comfortably? Now, what I'm looking for more than anything else is I need you guys to know what your yield requirement is, okay? Now, a lot of people invest for profit, they invest to get a return, but they don't know what the needed yield is. They haven't figured it out. So if I were to present you with an opportunity and say, hey, here's a great deal, you can put 100 grand into it, and after a couple of months, you know, maybe we'll sell it and I'm gonna give you $5,000. Oh, that sounds pretty good. Really? Does it? $5,000 on a $100,000 investment, that's only a 5% rate of return. Is that gonna get you what you need? See, because most people don't invest on yield. They don't even think about yield. They just think about the outcome. No. What yield do you need to get you to goal? Now, for me, I have a minimum yield requirement of 11%. I look at every investment that is brought before me, and the question I ask is, will this get me 11? And if the answer is no, I'm going to look at the numbers and figure out, is there a way I can get to 11? And if there isn't, I'm just going to say no to the deal. See, this makes it so much easier to evaluate and analyze investment opportunities. Now, especially if you are an accredited investor, accredited meaning that you make over $200,000 a year as a single filing payer, or if you're married, filing jointly with your spouse, you collectively make over $300,000 annually, or you have $1 million in investable assets excluding the equity in your primary residence. If you fall into that category, you are an accredited investor, and you make up less than 5% of the population of this country. And when you become an accredited investor, everyone knows it. And you will be bombarded with emails and phone calls and opportunities, everybody trying to get your money, because you now can invest in things that the rest of the general public cannot. And so the thing you have to ask is, how do I analyze so many different opportunities flying at me? What is the one thing I'm looking for? For me, it's 11% yield, okay? 11% yield, and it has to be backed by real estate, or it has to be some form of real property. Okay, those are my requirements. It's got to produce 11%, and it's got to be backed by real property. So don't bring me some syndication offering where we're going to build something. I want immediate cash flow. I don't want pie in the sky, flash in the pan, hope and pray that we're going to get this thing built at this cost and get you a return. I want to step into something right now that's producing that 11% rate of return. It can be a rental property, it can be a note, it can be a non-performing note. Don't care what it is, long as it's secured and it's currently paying 11%, I'm in.